My name's Tom Keller, and I've lived in the same quiet neighborhood just outside Norfolk, Virginia, for over 30 years. A blue-collar, well-worn, oaken porch kind of place that used to feel like home until the HOA turned it into a sandbox for control freaks. I'm a mechanic by trade, a rancher by birth, and a husband by grace. My wife, Commander Maria Keller, had just returned home from her latest deployment aboard the USS Truman, a 6-month stretch in the Atlantic that tested both our patience and our pride. I missed her like hell. She's the kind of woman who turns heads without trying, commands a room without raising her voice, and salutes the flag because she earned the right to. What I didn't expect, what I could never have seen coming, was that her homecoming would end with police sirens, HOA threats, and a suburban meltdown led by none other than the infamous Karen, the new president of our HOA. It started simple, like most fires do. A few days before Maria's return, I started tidying up the house, pressure-washed the driveway, hung our flag nice and high, and set up a welcome sign out front. I even backed our old '72 Chevelle out of the garage, her pride and joy, and parked it on the driveway just for the occasion. That's when Karen showed up. Blonde bob, clipboard in hand, pink windbreaker with the HOA logo stitched on the front like she was running a corporate empire. "Mr. Keller," she called out with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, "we've had a few complaints." "Complaints?" I asked, wiping sweat from my brow. She clicked her pen. "The sign on your porch, the flagpole height, and the vintage vehicle on your driveway. These all violate Section B3 of our updated HOA guidelines." I blinked. "That's my welcome sign, for my wife. She's coming home from deployment." Karen barely flinched. "We support our troops, of course, but the rule," Karen stammered. "But she doesn't live here. She's not on the lease or the property records." I cut in, trying hard not to lose it. "She's my wife, Karen. She's been serving our country for 6 months while you've been walking around with your little clipboard making people miserable." Maria added calmly, "And under federal law, I don't need to be listed on your community contact sheet to come home to my husband." Karen went red, not just in the cheeks, but full nuclear meltdown red. "This is a gated community," she sputtered. "We have standards." One of the officers handed the ID back to Maria. "No crime here. You two have a good night." Karen was seething. "You can't just let this go." The other officer looked at her like she was the one impersonating someone. "Ma'am, we're done here." That should have been the end of it. But for Karen, it was just fuel on the fire. The next morning, we got hit with 3 HOA violations. One for aggressive behavior toward board members, one for unauthorized cohabitation, and one for the unauthorized display of military symbols. That last one was the American flag flying over our porch. We laughed at first, but then she started doubling down. The HOA sent out newsletters warning residents to report unknown military individuals. Karen knocked on our neighbors' doors asking if Maria had been rude or intimidating. It got so bad that one of our neighbors, an elderly widow named Ethel, came over in tears. "She asked me if your wife was violent, Tom. I told her she was a hero." Maria tried to take it in stride, but I could see the toll it was taking. She'd fought pirates, seen storms that tore carriers apart, but this pettiness was getting under her skin. So we fought back. First, we documented everything. Letters, texts, audio recordings. Then we spoke to a military liaison about what had happened with the police. It set off a chain of events I wasn't ready for. 3 days later, the base commander himself contacted the HOA via official letter, citing multiple violations of the Service Members Civil Relief Act, not to mention public harassment of an active duty officer. Karen tried to dismiss it, claiming miscommunication, but it was too late. The letter went public, and then came the hearing. The HOA, under pressure, scheduled a private board meeting to review the matter. Maria showed up in full uniform. Not to show off, just to be herself. Karen walked in with a folder full of nonsense, and that smug look she always wore like armor. The board sat behind a cheap plastic folding table like it was a courtroom. Karen began by accusing Maria of disrupting community order and displaying aggressive military conduct. Maria just sat there, arms folded, perfectly composed. Then she stood up, walked to the front, and calmly placed her own file on the table. Inside was a printed list of federal protections afforded to military personnel, copies of the harassment reports, a statement from our neighbor Ethel, and a glowing letter of character from her commanding officer. Then she said the line I'll never forget. I've been shot at, sailed through combat zones, and managed entire departments aboard an aircraft carrier. But the first time I ever felt unsafe in my own country was when your president called the police on me in my husband's home. Dead silence. Karen tried to blurt something out, but the board president held up his hand. Enough. The fallout was swift. Karen was suspended from her position pending investigation. Her access to HOA files was revoked, and the police issued a public apology for being misled. But it didn't stop there. Turns out Karen had done this before, reported other residents she didn't like, fined people without proper documentation, and intimidated anyone who dared stand up to her. Maria's case cracked the dam wide open. A few weeks later, during a community vote, Karen was officially removed from her role. Her behavior was ruled as malicious abuse of authority. New rules were passed protecting all residents, especially veterans and active duty military, from harassment or baseless complaints. And the best part? The community, once silent, started to speak up. Neighbors brought over food. One even left a flag on our porch with a handwritten note. Thanks for standing tall, Commander. Maria still doesn't like talking about what happened. She says she's had tougher missions. But me? I think she handled it with more grace and power than any courtroom or military tribunal could have mustered. As for Karen, she still lives in the neighborhood, but now she walks a little quieter, steps a little lighter, and avoids our home like it's haunted. Maybe it is, haunted by the truth she never thought would catch up to her. We still fly the flag, still park that old Chevelle right where it belongs. And every morning, Maria walks out onto that porch in her robe, coffee in hand, and watches the sun rise over the yard she fought harder for than anyone ever should have had to. If you ask me, that's what home should be. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stick around. I've got more wild HOA tales coming your way.